Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Week 4 Start or Sit show here on the TFA airwaves. Hope you're all doing well. Hope the first 3 weeks have treated you well. Kev, how was week 2 of baby life and how was week 3 of football life for you, man?
It was good. It's another successful week, another solid week with DFS. It's always good when you don't lose money. That's always a positive week. So we're on to week 4. So yeah, and the baby, she's doing well. So she made an appearance on the Sunday show. So that was good.
Yeah, if you guys missed the Sunday pregame show, you missed a level of dedication that is truly awe-inspiring. We had Kev here who's holding down the household while also holding down the pregame show. He's there holding the baby, holding the bottle in his chin, so he has the other hand to research and answer questions for you all. So it was truly a sight to behold. It's something that I think every one of us can strive for in terms of our dedication. So if you are new to our Start or Sit show, the way we do things here is we're not going to sit here and tell you to start Russ Wilson and Pat Mahomes this week. We don't have time for that. We have to get to the actual nitty gritty. So we're going to be talking about maybe some surprise sits, maybe guys we should be pumping the brakes on. And then we're going to look at some deeper options, guys that are outside for quarterback and tight end, the top 12 on Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, and for running back and receiver outside the top 24, and obviously reverse for the sit. So with that out of the way, man, let's just jump right into it with quarterbacks. For me, for this week, there weren't too many guys that I looked at and thought in the top 12 that like we really need to worry about too much this week. I think it was pretty straightforward for me with the sits and the starts. To be honest, that the nice thing about this week in week 4 is we have there are a lot of options. So let's say you drafted Carson Wentz, right, and that hasn't been looking too well for you so far this year. There are a lot of options and waivers, or if you picked up a second quarterback that you can look to start this week. Kev, why don't you go ahead and start it off? Who are some guys outside of the top 12 that you think are worthy of a start this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different places you can go. I think Jared Goff is in a fantastic spot. I don't understand why he's still so widely available in fantasy leagues. The dude, especially the last 2 weeks, I think has put up at least 25 fantasy points in each of his last 2 games. This week they get the Giants, which is a defense that you really shouldn't be afraid of. I think he is squarely somebody that I would look to play, especially over a guy like Carson Wentz, who's really struggled. I'm kind of in the same boat as a fantasy owner. I drafted Carson Wentz and own him. I'm not to the level, I think, of dropping him, but I've strongly considered. Actually, Jared Goff was available in my league, and I actually picked him up. And I'm probably going to play him this week over Carson Wentz. I think there's better days ahead for Carson Wentz. We've seen in years past where he started off a little bit slow. I don't think I still think that he can turn it around. So I think that he's in play. I think Joe Burrow is somebody that you should be really looking at playing this week, playing against Jacksonville. Or on the other side, I think Gardner Minshew can also bounce back in that game. And I think a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick is also in play going against Seattle. Seattle's secondary is banged up. I don't know if Jamal Adams is going to play in this game. And, we saw a nice bounce back game, on his own right by Ryan Fitzpatrick. And we know Ryan Fitzpatrick has no problem chucking the ball downfield and has that DGAF attitude. So in a game that's going to be high scoring, they're going to have to throw the ball because Seattle and Russ Wilson has just been next level this entire season. So I think those are the guys that I'd be looking at.
Yeah, those are guys I had as well. The only other one that I will throw in here, Baker Mayfield. I think you can start him. Maybe the ceiling isn't there. He's kind of turned into honestly just like a game manager. But after his week 1, where against Baltimore he had a 65 quarterback rating, he's been in the triple digits since then. I think he has 4 touchdowns and 1 pick over the past 2 weeks. And going up against Dallas, which is another offense that has just been, putting up points and racking up the yards and everything else. So they're going to be playing from behind. I don't think they're going to be able to control the ball with Chubb the way they have been over the past couple of weeks. Going to force Baker to throw a little bit more. And Dallas is giving up the third most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. So, like I said, there's a lot of options, especially with the guys that you're going to be debating on starting anyway. So unless you're carrying two, I think really anyone that you have, maybe outside of, like we talked about, like Wentz, someone who you probably drafted as your QB1, you can basically start anyone this week. There weren't too many that I looked at where I thought we had to avoid them. So before we jump into the running backs, we have a couple of questions to grab here. Hoffman15 Mike wants to know thoughts on the Dolphins wide receivers this week. I mean, I think you kind of just touched on it with Fitz, right? If you're firing up Fitz, you got to feel good about their wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, Devontae Parker, I think he's certainly somebody that's in play, and I think that, if you were a little desperate, because right now we're kind of in that waiting, and we haven't really mentioned it, but obviously right now the Titans and Steelers game is postponed. They're looking to play it on Monday and Tuesday, which I would assume, since that's still a Week 4 game, I know there's been some questions on how the apps or like ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, all those, how would they handle it, right? I think it would still just it would just count towards your week if they play Monday or Tuesday. I don't know why it wouldn't. That wouldn't make any sense. So we're kind of waiting on that, which obviously it's going to be tough. But the good news is we should know it in advance. It's not like we're gonna be sitting here Sunday not knowing how this is going to turn out. It sounds like by Saturday they're going to know which way they're going and what direction they're heading in there. So obviously I think a guy like Big Ben that you may be thinking about starting this week. You may try to preemptively add somebody in the event that if they do not play on Monday or Tuesday, because I think that's something you should be looking at, and maybe adding a guy, just so you have them ready, in the event that you have to play them this week, because that very well could be happening. There's other guys like Deontay Johnson who needs to clear a concussion protocol, who I would definitely play, if he's active, but we won't know that until Friday at the earliest. But I don't even know if they're allowing. I would assume the Steelers are allowed to practice this week. I don't know why they wouldn't. They're not the team that's at risk, but the Titans certainly aren't. And we don't even know the Titans. I don't think they've even said who the players are. So right now, I mean, it could be Derrick Henry, it could be Ryan Tannehill. Like, we don't know who the players are that are actually sick. So we'll have to wait on that news as well. So there is some. This is a little bit different than what we normally see. But if I was a Big Ben owner, I would probably have a backup option ready for me in the event that Big Ben can't play.
Next question we got is coming in from Jacob. He wants to know, does he start Justin Jefferson or Julian Edelman? How are you handling Justin Jefferson after he just completely went off last week? Are you immediately trusting him? They're going up against Houston, and the Pats are going up against your Chiefs. Who do you want in this situation, and how do you feel about Justin Jefferson just in general after he went off?
I don't want to fall victim to point chasing, and I think that playing him. Listen, this is a great matchup against Houston. Houston's defense is not very good, especially their secondary is not very good. Could this be a sign of things to come for him? Sure. Like, he should have been the number 2 all year. I know there was the talk early on in training camp about Olabisi Johnson. That was ridiculous. We know Justin Jefferson's a baller, and so. Would I play him over Julian Edelman? No, because I think that this Chiefs game, again, we know, I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't care who the matchup is, whoever they're playing, you're going to have to put up points. You're going to be probably playing from behind at some point in the game. And so with that, they're not going to be able to play ball control offense and run the football and all this stuff against the Chiefs. So they're going to have to throw the ball a lot more, much like we saw against Seattle, where Julian Edelman just went absolutely ridiculous and went nuclear in that game and had a career game. So I would play Julian Edelman.
All right, let's roll into the running backs for this week. I'll kick things off for I think for both of us for not necessarily a set, but a guy that just doesn't make any sense to us in terms of where he is ranked in terms of the consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros, and that is Derrick Henry, and that is with or without whatever is happening right now with Tennessee. He was ranked, like top 6, top 5. And in PPR consensus rankings, just doesn't make any sense. The Steelers are giving up the second fewest fantasy points per game to running backs. They've given up the fewest rushing yards this year to running backs. They're like at 121 or something is all they've given up through 3 weeks. And that was with Melvin Gordon had 70, I think, against them in week 2. So you're talking about the other 2 weeks combined, they've given up 50 rushing yards. So again, probably not someone that you have the luxury of sitting unless you went, running back heavy. Maybe you struck some gold a little bit later in the mid rounds of your drafts. So you're probably not completely sitting him, but definitely someone you need to pump the brakes on. And if you do have two other solid options and you have a wide receiver that you could flex this week, maybe you can get away with sitting him because I don't like this matchup one bit. Other than that, there wasn't anyone that really stuck out to me again that was like in a really bad spot. So my starts for this week, again, these are going to be guys that are outside of the top 24. I'm going to go with Devin Singletary and Darrell Henderson. With Singletary, it looks like he's going to be leading that backfield. I think Zach Moss did get in a limited practice this week, but Singletary looked really good last week, had a bunch of chunk yardage. Vegas is giving up the second or the most fantasy points per game, rather, and that taking into consideration they're giving up the sixth most rush yards, the second most rushing touchdowns, the second most receptions to running backs, and the most receiving yards. So Singletary is a play I really like this week going up against Las Vegas. Vegas has been doing a much better job in the passing game versus the running game. I think with quarterback, they are giving up like the fifth fewest fantasy points per game, and that the Raiders are. The other guy, like I mentioned, Henderson, someone that I did not like coming into this year. He looked really good going up against Buffalo last week. He's someone else who just kept picking up chunky yardage left and right. It seemed like every time I was looking at that game, it was 6, 7, 8 yards a clip. Now he gets the Giants, who are giving up the 10th most fantasy points per game. And like I said, last week had himself a really nice game against a Buffalo team that was in the bottom 10 of fantasy points allowed. Looks like Cam Akers is probably going to miss this week again. And it kind of seems like, especially after that first week, if you read that quote from McVay, it kind of seemed like they wanted Akers to be more involved, that they wanted him to be the guy, but Malcolm Brown was just playing so well, they kind of went with a hot hand approach. So I think that's gonna be the approach that they take all year. So I think Henderson's gonna get first crack at the carries, and unless he completely falls on his face, he should definitely handle the bulk of these. And then if you need a super deep play for this week, a guy that we've been talking about all year in the offseason and then leading into every week with waivers, Chase Edmonds. I think this is a week where you could play him if you had to, if you're suffering from the injury bug. Going up against a Carolina team that's giving up the second most fantasy points per game. So I think if you need someone to kind of just pick up off of waivers and stream and play this week, that's going to give you flex level value, I think you can go with Chase Edmonds going up against Carolina.
Yeah, I said it on the Sunday show. Like I do think that I don't think it's a hot take to say if Kenyon Drake doesn't start to turn it around, you could see Chase Edmonds take over this backfield. Like Kenyon Drake has not been good. This is probably the best matchup he's going to get to be able to prove that going against Carolina. Carolina's defensive line has not been great this year. They're below average. They are 20th in adjusted line yards, 29th in power rank, 19th in stuff rank. So they have not been very good in terms of stopping the run. So this is a good matchup for him. So if there was going to be a week that he was going to get going, this would be it. I've kind of gone back and forth on this because Devonta Freeman, right, is in a fantastic spot this week. And Joe Judge came out and said that they want to get him more involved. He had played 29% of the snaps last week. Obviously, it was his first week. We kind of talked about that he was going to be worked in slowly, which he was. But I think he's going to get more and more opportunities. And so by looking at this, the Rams have been terrible against the run. They are second or 31st in the league, in adjusted line yards, 19th in power rank, 30th in stuff rank, 24th in second level yards. Their defensive line. The problem is the Giants have been just as fucking bad, right? Like almost historically bad on their offensive line, where they're ranked dead last in adjusted line yards. And it's not even close. They're still 1.77 adjusted line yards compared to San Francisco, who is second, or 31st, excuse me, who is 309. Like, it is that bad. Now, I will say this: the the Giants have had really bad matchups so far, but they haven't been able to take advantage of it. Now, like we just talked about with, San Francisco's defensive line hasn't been great either. So I don't know. We'll see. I think that you could play Devonta Freeman if you were desperate, depending on injuries and stuff like that, if you desperately needed a flex, because there's a couple of guys that are out this week, with the injuries and everything else that are going on, especially if we have the postponement where you're really going to be scrambling for somebody. I don't hate the idea of playing Devonta Freeman. I totally agree with what you just said on Darrell Henderson. I think that he's definitely in play. I have him as a top. I have him at 18th. I think James White is somebody that we should be looking to play this week. I know everybody went out and spent a lot of fab at a high waiver priority to add Rex Burkhead, because Rex Burkhead went out and had 34 points, but we kind of said it this week, right? That do not spend fab budget on him. Do not waste your waiver priorities on him, because the biggest reason he got most of that work was because James White has been out the last 2 weeks dealing with, a tragedy in his family, not due to injury. He is back this week. He returned to practice today. So it sounds like he's going to be playing. And again, if you're playing the Chiefs, you're going to be playing from behind, and James White is likely going to see a lot of opportunities in that game. I don't think it's going to be Rex Burkhead. Rex Burkhead will get opportunities, sure, because they kind of have a committee. But I would love to play James White this week in the flex. I think he's certainly in play. I have him as a high-end RB3 in the flex. And there's some other guys that I think people may have some questions about, like a David Johnson. I think this is a fantastic matchup. Minnesota's defense as a whole has been horrendous. And, the Texans have actually been decent against in terms of run blocking. He scored a touchdown last week against Pittsburgh, which you mentioned. I think Myles Gaskin, who is clearly the lead back in this backfield for the Dolphins, will probably see a lot of targets in this game, playing from behind. So I think he's in play as a flex option. And then you have the guys like Jeff Wilson, who you can play. I think he'll get more opportunities going against Philly, but this isn't a great matchup. It's really going to depend on how I feel about this, because Philly's front seven is still really good. But I think if you were in a pinch and you had to play somebody, I think Jeff Wilson. And then I think Nyheim Hines is the other guy I want to talk about. He's kind of fluctuated in terms of his usage, but I think this is a good matchup for Nyheim Hines. I think with Nick Foles, if this offense could take a step forward, I think we could be looking at a little bit more of a high-scoring game here, where that works out better for Nyheim Hines.
So you were talking about Devonta Freeman, CJ Lang, our guy CJ Lang, at Clubber_Lang83 or Clubber_Lang_83. There's an underscore in there somewhere. He wants to know, with Fournette rolled out or appearing like he's going to be rolled out, would you go Rojo versus the Chargers or Devonta versus the Rams?
I mean, I don't think you have an option. You have to play Ronald Jones, but I'm going to be honest, this is a fucking awful matchup. The Chargers defense has been, especially against the run, has been fantastic this year. So it's really tough for me to trust that. But I would go Ronald Jones just because he's going to get opportunity. But who knows? Maybe we get a Keyshawn Vaughn sighting this week.
Stranger things have happened. We have Big Ten coach PJ Fleck. Appreciate you joining the YouTube stream here, Coach Fleck. He wants to know, would you trade T.Y. Hilton, Will Fuller, and Miles Sanders for Monty and Adams?
I wouldn't, no. I mean, I just can't give up Miles Sanders. I think that he's going to continue to play a big role in this offense, and giving up guys that are workhorse backs is just something I can't do. I think Will Fuller, I think this week he has a fantastic matchup to really crush. Minnesota's secondary, as we know, is absolutely atrocious. And Will Fuller's a guy I really like. I have him as a top 15 wide receiver this week. And moving forward, I mean, he's going to continue to get opportunities and targets. Last week wasn't a great matchup going against Pittsburgh. So I just can't do it. I love Devontae Adams, and I think he, obviously he's going to be peppered with targets, but I can't do that. I would much rather want T.Y., Will Fuller, and Miles Sanders.
So for you, it's not worth the downgrade going from Miles to Monty and the upgrade going from Ty and Ford to Adams.
No, it's just those workhorse running backs are so hard to get rid of, and like it would take an absolute haul for me to want to get rid of him. Whether it's a guy like Zeke or guys like that. Like honestly, like I know this isn't a buy sell show, but I would be out there looking to buy Joe Mixon any way I possibly can. He's once again starting off super slow, and I think that people will want to get rid of him, and I think you can buy him on a discount, and I want all of that.
Another trade question here from Shelton. Would you trade DK Metcalf or D Hop for Clyde?
I would trade. I would want to know who his other receivers are and what his running backs are, but yeah, I could see myself trading DK Metcalf for Clyde. Yeah,
he would also be my choice as much as I pounded the table for Metcalf as a top 10 receiver, which he is right now in week 3. I'll take a quick little victory lap on that one. But if I am going to give up one of those, it is going to be DK. D Hop has just been the targets aren't even comparable with those two. Metcalf is going to have his weeks, but D Hop is just going to be super, super steady, and he's going to have some of those big weeks for you as well. That man, ooh, that's tough. Like I said, if I'm going to do that, it's easily DK. But like you, I'd want to know who his other running backs and receivers were before making a straight call on that. Another man, this is awesome. We haven't had this many trade questions all year last year, I think, and we're already getting there in week 4. Matthew John wants to know: would you trade Devonta Freeman for Gaskin?
I think I would.
I would, yeah.
It's tough because like
Gaskin's getting the touches. He just hasn't been extremely efficient with them. And then whenever they get even sniffing the goal line, here comes Jordan Howard, aka Jordan Asiata, coming in to just vulture that touchdown from you and just piss you right off. They tried to give Gaskin, I think, what was it, like 2 carries at the goal line last week, and then he just got stopped, and then Jordan Howard comes in and scores a touchdown, which is just super tilting. But yeah, I think I would, because I think it's 2020, and I think you can trust Myles Gaskin more so than you can trust Devonta Freeman.
It's just tough because like I see a path of success for Devonta Freeman, right? And I know a lot of people we've said it, we've all said it that if Saquon Barkley can't run behind this line, how do we expect Devonta Freeman? And I get that. I do think that this offensive line does have a lot of new pieces, and I think it's without any training camp, without any OTAs, without preseason and a limited training camp, the way they was ran, that it's going to take some time for this offensive line to really gel. And I could see in the second half this offense becoming better and Devonta Freeman being somebody that you would want to play on a weekly basis as like a flex or maybe a low-end RB2. I think it very well could change and where this happens, because we also know he's a capable pass catcher and he's a much better goal line back and somebody that's going to get those opportunities. But is it a lock to happen? No. And that's why I would be a little hesitant to making the trade, because let's be honest, Gaskins could struggle for a couple weeks, and then it's Jordan Howard, and where I don't feel like I have to worry about that with Dion Lewis and Wayne Gallman. They paid Devonta Freeman a decent amount to be a guy that he came off the street. So I would probably do it, but I still am a little hesitant on it.
Mike is back, wants to know, if Chris Carson plays, would you play Carson or Parker in PPR? For me, I'm just going to go with Parker for this regardless. Even if Carson plays, that's just one of those things where, what's the point? Like, what is the why would they just throw Carson in there and give him a workhorse role?
He's already practicing though this week, and so I have him at rank 15th. Like if he's already practicing, it's clearly not as bad as we thought it was. They already said it was mild. If he's practicing, it sounds like that he's trending towards playing. So I know it's against Miami, so maybe they don't feel like they have to play him as much. But right. I would feel really bad for myself if I sat Chris Carson and he goes out and scores 2 touchdowns and runs for gets you 100 yards. So I would still roll Chris Carson.
man, uh, that's just what like I feel the same way on the opposite side of like, all right, well, Pete Carroll said he's been practicing all week. Let's fire him up, and he goes out there and gets 5-6 carries, 30 yards, and then his day is done. That's I don't know. I know it might not have been as bad as we thought it was whenever we saw that live, which is just a scumbag play. But man, I just don't understand. Like, even if he was like feeling good, why you would even risk it?
You have to see. I mean, if he starts getting in full, because I don't think it was full. I think it was limited participation. If he starts getting in full participation by Friday, he's ready to roll. Like, he's ready to go. And so you fire him up. Like, there should be nothing to be worried about at that point.
So you think even if it was just the one full practice on Friday, that would be enough for you?
Yeah, it tells you everything you really need to know. And I honestly, like, I don't. People overreact a little bit too much to like Wednesday practice reports. Like, a lot of teams rest veterans and everything else. People start to freak out on Wednesday, and you hear news that a guy sat out of practice or something like that. Like, that's not really that big of a deal to me.
Got a defense question. Anthony wants to know: are the Broncos just an easy play this week going up against the Jets?
Let me see. Go to the flow chart. Are they playing the Jets? They're playing the Jets. Okay, yes. Whoever is playing the Jets is the defense that I want this week. This offense is so fucking bad, and I'm sorry. Like, you play anybody who plays this. You know what I'm hoping for actually is that they just get fucking steamrolled. The Jets do by a third string quarterback. And Adam Gase, they tell him, hey, let's just pack your stuff and let's head out, or he comes in on Friday and his key card doesn't work because Adam Gase is the worst head coach. Like, I used to think Jeff Fisher was really bad. We used to all like make fun of Jeff Fisher, and there was the Jeff Fisher memes and all that stuff. Jeff Fisher is a way better head coach. Like, Adam Gase, everybody that has left Adam Gase has went on to success, and that's everything you need to know. So, like, you watch. He's going to leave, and all of a sudden Sam Darnold is going to turn out to be, a much better quarterback than what everybody thinks that he is. Like, Adam Gase is a wrecker of teams.
Yeah, I mean, this would obviously depend on who you have available in your league, but I think you can feel very confident in just plugging in the Broncos and letting them stream this week. So as we move on to wide receiver, we have a poignant question here from Silencer 1914. DJ Moore or the aforementioned Devontae Parker?
DJ Moore, and he's another guy that I think is a really good buy low candidate. I know people are a little bit down on him. He's not really seeing the end zone, but he's still getting a 30% target share in this offense, and so that's exactly what I'm looking for. And so I have no problem with playing DJ Moore. I think he's still been a wide receiver 2 in terms of fantasy points per game. He's getting, like I said, 30% of the touches. And so, yeah, I'm playing DJ Moore. And like I said, I think he's a pretty solid buy low candidate.
I would look for a way to start both of those guys because the Cardinals are giving up I think it's the second fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers somehow.
Who have they played?
I mean, but still though, with them being ahead, you would still expect. So they played the Niners, Washington, and Detroit. So,
I mean, Washington, who are their or against San Francisco? What wide receivers do they have? None, right? It was George Kittle, and they were landing on the running game. And then Washington, Dwayne Haskins has been terrible so far this year, so that doesn't really surprise me. And Kenny Golladay had a pretty good game last week. Found the end zone. I don't know. I wouldn't. Some of that is little context. Like, we need a little bit more context behind that. Like, I don't think Arizona secondary is all of a sudden great or a lockdown secondary.
No.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about the Arizona secondary.
No, like I said, I would just look for a way to get both those guys in because I do like Parker this week as a play. Shade 721 was thinking dropping Preston Williams for Higgins. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think you could do that. T. Higgins' numbers have trended upwards each week. AJ Green appears to be showing his age,
Dust in the wind.
which is sad because I've always loved AJ Green. AJ Green has always been a baller, but that or he's just he's sandbagging it, try to get moved or released or something because he really just wants to get off out of the Bengals because he didn't want to come back there. But last week, we saw with him last week what he played. So he played 61% of the snaps week 2. He played 88% of the snaps last week. He ran 40 routes week 2, 43 routes last week. 6 targets week 2, 9 targets in week 3. And then, 3 and 5 receptions. And then he also had the 2 touchdowns last week. So, and he also had 150 air yards, which is pretty good. So, yeah, I would do that.
All right, let's jump into the start sit for the wide receivers this week. Again, there wasn't anything that really jumped out to me in the top 12, the top 24 of plays where I was looking at where it was just like, you got to stay away from, or guys I'd be looking to sit. One that kind of did catch me a little bit by surprise and just felt a little point chasey was the fact of Keenan Allen being ranked in the top 10 just kind of after his blow-up game. I know he had the solid week 2 game, I think, where he went for almost 100 yards, but obviously last week it was 13 for like 130 and a touchdown. So I was just a little surprised to see him that high after how far down he had been in the consensus ranks leading up to this point. But again, outside of that, there wasn't really anyone that jumped out to me as, what is he doing up here? So I really think that they're, like I said, with the quarterbacks and with the running backs, really, there weren't too many just like complete stay away matchups for me here either. Like we were talking about with the Raiders, they are giving up the second fewest fantasy points per game, but they're also only, I think they are pressuring or getting quarterback pressures like the 8th least. So if you're giving Josh Allen time to throw, obviously Stephon Diggs, he's been a go-to guy for him, and he's been playing pretty well. Outside of last week, he didn't do too much. He was ranked 13th. So again, just someone who was like a little bit higher than I had expected, but I don't think you can really sit him at this point right now either, unless you have much better options. So Kev, why don't you kick things off here? Give me, do you have any sits to kind of just kick things off, and then go into who are some of the guys you like this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think one would definitely be Jarvis Landry. He really hasn't had a whole lot of success so far earlier in the year. We know they get Dallas this week. They're gonna have to throw the ball. I think that with that, I think that he's somebody that gets a lot more targets. I mean, he only has 13 targets on the year. He's only getting 16% of the targets. So that is obviously not what you're looking for. And I think a lot of people that drafted him, in the 6th, 7th round, were expecting a little bit more than this. But they've just been running the ball at such a high clip, they haven't really had to do anything. He's only averaging 8.8 fantasy points per game. But in this matchup, they're going to have to throw the ball. And, we know that you can beat Dallas through the secondary. Their secondary is absolutely horrific. And so they should be looking to throw the ball a little bit more. Of course, they're still going to run the ball. They're going to, what they need to be doing, as we know, is that Baker Mayfield is so much better whenever you get him in play action. And if they can do that, I think this spells good things for guys like Odell and Jarvis Landry this week. So I do like Jarvis Landry as like a wide receiver 3 flex option. I would be looking to play him. We're going to have to monitor some things because, last week, Devonta Adams, Michael Thomas, and Julio Jones all missed. But it sounds like that they could all play this week. Michael Thomas did return to practice today, which is a little surprising because for a high ankle sprain, that's a little bit soon. So he would be scary to play because of the fact that, if he re-injures that, coming off a high ankle sprain, and a lot of these times these guys don't look the same after a high ankle sprain. But the thing about him that doesn't worry me as much is he's not like a deep threat. He's somebody that just kind of goes out and runs that 10 to 15-yard route, short and intermediate guy. And so I think that even still, I think he would get peppered with targets. So, there's no way I'm sitting Michael Thomas. But with those guys back, I think that changes some things a little bit. I still think Russell Gage you can definitely play. They're playing Green Bay. This is another shootout type game where we should be looking for that. Even if Devontae Adams plays, I think Allen Lazard is certainly in play. Dude absolutely smashed last week against the Saints. I don't know what's going on with the Saints. I mean, Drew Brees, he may be cooked. I'm not sure. But Allen Lazard against Atlanta, I'm all about that life. And then I really like Greg Ward playing San Francisco this week. We talked about it last week. San Francisco's defense is banged up. They still do not have Richard Sherman. Now, the problem is with this is, well, who the hell does Philadelphia have? Because Dallas Goedert, it sounds like he's going to be out for – he actually has a fractured ankle, which is a problem, obviously. And then Deshaun Jackson may play. It doesn't sound like it's actually as serious as what we thought it was, but he did not practice today. But like I mentioned, I'm more worried about the Thursday, Friday practices, if they're actually going to play or not. Wednesday doesn't really matter to me. But it does sound like Deshaun Jackson does have a shot at playing. Even still, Greg Ward is going to see a lot of targets. They brought in Hakeem Butler, right? As they signed him off the street to be a tight end. He was a converted tight end from a wide receiver. Maybe you'll talk about him in the tight ends. I don't know. But Greg Ward is going to see a lot of targets. And so I like him. The Raiders, I mean, they are another team. Brian Edwards is hurt. Henry Ruggs is hurt. It looks like they could be running out guys like Zay Jones and Nelson Aguilar. So Hunter Renfrow in the slot had a pretty nice game last week. I think he is somebody that should be an option for people as kind of like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 flex type of play. I think you can go there. Robbie Anderson, I think this is another great matchup for him, especially if DJ Moore sees a lot of Patrick Peterson. I think that Robbie Anderson would be a guy that I would want to play this week in a matchup against Arizona. And then there's some other options. I think KJ Hamler, you could go there if you want to play somebody. Anthony Miller. Listen, I know people are going to look at Indy and see what they've done, and think that Indy's defense is really good. I'm going to say it again. Their secondary is not very good. They just haven't played anybody yet to challenge them. So I think this could be a week where Allen Robinson actually plays just as good as he did last week. And we've seen Anthony Miller as a guy who can get you double-digit fantasy points. He's done it 2 of the last 3 weeks. So I like Anthony Miller as well.
You brought off a bunch of the ones that I had as well. The one that I'll add, I think you kind of touched on briefly whenever we were talking about quarterback, but that's Will Fuller. He's currently being ranked outside the top 24, and you have Minnesota giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. So that is a play I like there. With Minnesota as well, you're talking about a team that's giving up, the 5th most air yards to the position as well. And we know what Will Fuller can do whenever he's fully healthy. So that is a play that I like a lot, just to expand on what you were talking about earlier. Outside of that, I mean, I think if you have to, you could look at somebody like Laviska Shenault going up against Cincy. That should, I mean, not necessarily a shootout, but I don't think that's going to be a game where either team gets jumps out to a big lead and allows the other one to dictate the game pace and the flow of the game. Cole Beasley has been quietly putting together some solid weeks, even since the beginning of the year. And we had mentioned some of the injuries. You have John Brown, who's banged up. They do have Dawson Knox, who cleared the concussion protocol, so he should be coming back. But it's going to be a lot of Diggs and a lot of Cole Beasley, I think. And if maybe a sprinkling of Gabe Davis, if he's somebody that you want to grab and stash, kind of that last spot on your roster, you just kind of keep rotating through for your high upside play. And then I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but Scotty Miller. Now he did miss practice today. He was banged up last week, but Godwin looks like he's going to be out. Keep an eye on Scotty Miller and his practice reports throughout the week, and if he's able to go, I like him. Other than that, here's a question. with Mecole Hardman finally showing up, what are you doing with him in lineups if you have him, or does last week's performance make you feel better going forward about projecting his role in the offense? Because up until now, it had been a little bit more Demarcus Robinson. He wasn't getting much play, but Mecole Hardman finally had himself a nice game and should have had 2 touchdowns instead of just the one. So is this kind of where we start to see that turn for Mecole Hardman?
I don't know if I would trust it. I would want to see more from it, because if you go back and look, he still only played 42% of the snaps. It's actually less than he played week 2. He played 65% of the snaps week 2. He played 42% of the snaps last week, and he actually ran less routes. He only ran 23 routes. He was targeted more, which was 6 targets for the 81 and a touchdown. But I know, because we are you see that you see vividness bias sets in, and a guy had a big week, so you automatically want to play him the next week. But I mean, if you look at the other numbers, I mean, he actually played less. He actually only played 42%. Like I said, he's not running many routes, so he's going to be boom or bust to be able to trust him. Going against the Patriots, it's at home, it's in Kansas City. Not that really matters anymore. But can you play him? Sure. Would I want to play him? Probably not. If there's better options, it just depends. Because like I said, I just think he's such boom or bust right now. I don't think you can trust him. There's still so many options. There's still Sammy Watkins, Kelsey, Hill, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, there's just so many options. Would it surprise me if Demarcus Robinson all of a sudden got 6 targets last week and McCole only saw 2 or 3? Sure, no, it wouldn't at all. So I just think he's a little bit too boom or bust. I want somebody that's going to be that you can kind of project their targets, and for me, I just don't think that's it for him.
Just to mention this is one more other play. Marvin Jones with Kenny Golladay returning. I think going up against New Orleans, and in a scenario where you think they're going to have to throw often, I think Marvin Jones could be a sneaky play if you need him. Obviously, he's kind of disappointed up to this point, but I think this could be a week where you start him. So before we move on to tight end and start to wrap things up, we got a couple of questions we got to get to. Mark wants to know, he's looking to trade James Conner. What kind of running backs would you trade in a target? Is that something where you would just go straight to the Joe Mixon owner like we were talking earlier?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good place to start. Like I said, I think Joe Mixon turns it around. And he's actually being more involved. At least he's running more routes and everything. And I think people are missing that, and they're just looking at the box score and 70 fantasy points he's putting up. Like, the passing volume is going to come for him. And so, we saw it last year where he started off really slow, and he became like almost droppable to a point, and then he exploded, right? And then finished I think over the final 8 games of the season, he was RB3. So he's certainly a guy to be looking to buy low on. So yeah, I mean, if you could move James Conner, who as we know is as injury prone as they come, yeah, I would have no problem doing that.
We got George in the chat, and I think he's just he's flexing and just bragging here. Traded Hunt for A-Rob. I mean,
that's slaying it.
Good for you. Good for you, man. RD, Steelers D or Broncos? Obviously, we have the Steelers going up against the Titans. I think I would just roll Broncos.
I think I would too. I think the Steelers game is probably one where you don't see as much throwing, and I think more ball control type of game. And so, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Ryan Tannehill only threw the ball 18 times in that game. It's going to depend on how game script rolls. I would probably go Broncos.
And Tannehill also isn't someone who takes a bunch of sacks or makes a bunch of mistakes either. So I think I would just roll Broncos there as well. Javon Pope in the YouTube chat, Devontae Adams for Kamara.
Yeah, if you're getting Kamara, hell yeah, like smash. Except I'm in. Like, Alvin Kamara has been single-handedly. Yes. Carrying the Saints. Like, the dude's a baller. He's going to continue to get opportunities. He's going to continue to see 10 targets a game. I mean, he is putting up wide receiver. I think I saw, if you removed all of his rushing yards for the year, he would be the wide receiver like 3 on the season. Like and that's with removing all rushing yards, all rushing touches. That's how good he's been. So yeah, if you could trade Devonta Adams from Alvin Kamara, like
right meow. Right meow.
And this next question is a no. Mike Evans without Chris Godwin, we saw it a couple weeks ago. Like he is going to be hammered with targets, and I want all of Mike Evans.
Yeah, I really did. And like, even if Gage were the wide receiver 1 there for Atlanta, I can't imagine any scenario for me anyway, where I'd be sitting Evans for Gage.
And I don't think has Gage cleared concussion protocol.
I'm not entirely sure. I did not.
I would doubt he has, because I think you can't do it until Friday. So the same thing for Deontay Johnson. So I'm not even entirely sure if he's going to play. So
our guy Trey in the chat wants to know pick 2 full PPR: DJ Moore, Melvin Gordon, Devontae Parker, Jarvis Landry. We got three receivers we've talked about here already. Melvin Gordon going up against the Jets. Looks like Phillip Lindsay should be back for this game. Man.
So it's DJ Moore. That's easy, right? Melvin Gordon seems like a great play, right? Because you see, oh man, they're playing the Jets, right? The Jets are terrible. This is tough for me because if you look a little bit closer, the Broncos, for one, their offensive line ranks 27th in adjusted line yards, which for reference is not very good. They're 30th in stuff rank. But if you look at the Jets, like surprisingly, once again, they are right on par with the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of the run defense. They are 2nd in adjusted line yards, 22nd in power rank, 2nd in stuff rank, 12th in second level yards. They've actually been really good against the run. It's almost like a little bit of what you see in terms of like last year with the Saints, right? Or not the Saints, the Bucks. The Bucks were a run funnel. Like a lot of people, you see the Bucks, you want to target them. Then eventually, if people started to catch on that the Bucks were actually really good against the run. So far, the Jets have actually been pretty solid against the run. So do I want to sit Melvin Gordon? I mean, no. That's probably who I would go with, but I would temper my expectations a little bit with Melvin Gordon. Like the two things aren't aligning for this to be a great matchup. Now, of course, Melvin Gordon will probably go out and just rush for 200 yards or something. But I would still play Melvin Gordon probably in this matchup. But I wouldn't. I don't feel as great about it. I just think other people probably would.
Man, it would just be so hard for me to sit. Like these are tough. This is a tough group to talk through, because obviously with Devontae Parker going up against Seattle, you're talking about a team that is just far and away like the worst against wide receivers this year. They have given up 1,100 receiving yards to wide receivers, and the next closest is Atlanta, who's given up 736. Then you have Landry going up against the Cowboys, 2nd in fantasy points per game against, and they have given up the most touchdowns to wide receivers in the league at 7. This is man. Because I think, dude, this is. Are you just rolling those first two there for sure? Obviously, you said you're locking in DJ Moore. Are you going Melvin Gordon, or are you leaning toward one of those receivers?
Yeah, I'd probably play Melvin Gordon.
That's tough, man. Another trade question, this one also coming from Trey. Offered Chris Godwin for Devontae Parker in the same league. Obviously, if this is before the season started, that's a smash. Do you do that now?
Yes. Chris Godwin's this injury is not that serious. He's out this week for sure, but they said he could play next week, but he probably won't because they play Thursday. But by that time, it'll have been 3 full weeks. Like he'll be ready to go. What is it? Week 7, I think. I'm not sure when their bye lands, but yeah, I would take that trade.
Yeah, I think with the options that you laid out to us in the needing to pick two, I think you can do that and just kind of sit on Chris Godwin until he's healthy and he's active. So I would also definitely do that. Mark is back. Are you concerned with DJ Chark's target share? Obviously, he hasn't been the absolute hog that I think we expected him to be at the outset of the season. They're getting your boy Keelan Cole involved. They're getting there's been some Tyler Eifert sightings, some O'Shaughnessy sightings, and then with getting LaVisca involved as well. I don't know if I would necessarily be completely concerned. Obviously, it's not what we expected at the outset. But I would, I mean, if because you're not going to be able to, if you're looking to possibly trade him right now, you're not going to get back the full value, especially of where you probably drafted him. So I would just sit and wait on that one as well, unless you get um, another comparable receiver, like, I don't know, maybe you can get a Tyler Boyd.
So here's the thing: you're trading DJ Chark at his absolute lowest value, right? He
Right.
was out last week. I think there's again context that should be put into this. Week 1, I think they only threw the ball 20 times. So they really, outside of until we got to last week, and that last week was a terrible game, and he obviously didn't play last week. But in the opportunities he's gotten, I mean, he's still putting up around 12 fantasy points per game, which isn't terrible. I do think that they're going to have to start throwing the ball more than what they did. And DJ Chark is definitely going to be that guy. I think he's still their best wide receiver. And so I think there's better roads ahead. So again, I mean, another guy you could probably buy low, but I certainly wouldn't be selling him low because I just think that's ridiculous. If you really wanted to trade DJ Chark and you're really that worried about it, wait till he has a blow up game and then look to move him. Don't sell him now because, I mean, you're selling him at his lowest value. What's the point? What are you going to really realistically get for him? You're not going to get nearly as much as what you should. And again, Jaguars are a team they're going to be playing from behind. Their schedule looks great moving forward over the next couple of weeks as well. And so I think I would much rather just hold on to him and play him.
Blue Crew joining us on the YouTube chat. 10-team PPR. Start T. Higgins or Marquise Hollywood Brown.
Oh, I would go Marquise Brown. I mean, I don't think there's anything to really worry about with what happened last week against the Chiefs. I think they bounced back in a big way this week, and I mean, the Chiefs are really the only team that have been ever been able to make them look the way that they just did. I think it was even surprising for most people how well the Chiefs just demoralized them and really didn't do anything until the very end of the game. And if it wouldn't been for that fumble by Darwin Thompson late in the game, it would have been even more lopsided than it was. So I wouldn't expect that moving forward. I would definitely play Marquise Brown. And no, I would not drop Joshua Kelly for Jared Goff. You have Deshaun Watson. There's no reason to make that move.
Agreed. All right, man. Let's roll into tight end here and start to wrap this up as we are nearing an hour. Again, man, with tight end, same as it was last week. I think we're kind of getting a much better feel. We thought this is like, don't get me wrong, we still have more options this year than we have in years past. But I think the start sit decisions, except with our guy Philip, who joins us on Sunday mornings every week, they're getting pretty cut and dry. The waiver wire is starting to dry up on the tight end front again. One thing I will say, obviously Tyler Higbee, if you drafted him, you probably drafted him relatively early. Probably didn't take a second tight end, or you shouldn't have. He's going up against the Giants, who have given up. Maybe I think they're like bottom 5 for fantasy points allowed to the tight end position. Again, need context with that. They haven't faced a murderer's row of tight ends by any means. But the thing that is most concerning with me with Tyler Higbee is the fact that he's just not running a lot of routes at all. I think he's actually tied with Kyle Rudolph for routes run at the tight end position. So he's not being as involved as everyone had hoped going into this season, everyone kind of was just like, well, obviously it's going to be Tyler Higbee, no questions asked. He's just going to continue rolling the way that he did at the end of the year last year. Not so fast. So if for some reason you have somebody else, a top 10, top 12 option at the tight end position, I would look at starting them over Higbee this week, just because, like I said, he's just not being as involved in terms of the routes run as we would have expected coming into this year. Like it's pretty low. I'll have to look it up while I let you talk for a little bit, but he's really not like it's not even close. Like it's a super low amount for our expectations of Higbee. Looking at some guys who are outside the top 12 that I think you can fire up this week. I'm going to keep going back to this well. I'm going to keep saying it because I'm going to eventually be right one of these weeks. But Logan Thomas, he is actually running the third most routes at the tight end position. I think he has the second most targets amongst tight ends. Going up against Baltimore, they're going to need to throw the ball a bunch. And outside of McLaurin, Steven Sims, there's just nothing else. Logan Thomas should have had a better game last week if it weren't for some errant throws by Haskins. So I think you can look at him if you need a streaming option. George Kittle was a full go at practice today. So obviously, unless he has a setback, he's looking to be back in. So that's going to be a big boost to a lot of your teams that took Kittle in the second or third round. Pains me to say, but Chris Herndon, I would probably be looking elsewhere if you need a streaming option this week. Maybe somebody like Mo Alley Cox, honestly, who's had 2 good weeks in a row and kind of seems like he is putting Jack Doyle on the back burner as their tight end 2 instead of their tight end 1. So there's some guys that I am looking at. Kev, what say you? Is there anybody in the top 12 of the Fantasy Pros consensus rankings that you are concerned with? And if not, who are you looking at outside of the top 12 that you like this week for a play?
Dalton Schultz. I'll start there. He's been fantastic in the 2 weeks that he's taken over for Blake Jarwin. Sad for old Robbie, right? Who loves some Blake Jarwin heading in, but I mean, he's 15% target share, which isn't fantastic, but he's 7th in targets, 8th in routes run, 5th in red zone targets. He's had 4 of those on the season. So I mean, there's a lot to like. He had that big blow up game week 2 against the Falcons where he scored 21.8, and then this past week against Seattle, he still had 6 targets, ran 35 routes, 4 receptions, 48 yards, 51 air yards, which about 9 fantasy points in PPR formats. But, they also get the Cleveland Browns this week, which we always want to target tight ends against the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to the position. So he is in a great spot. I have him as a tight end 1 this week for sure. He's somebody that's kind of been a nice surprise so far this season. TJ Hawkinson, he's definitely in play against the Saints. The Saints, like I said, the Saints secondary has been awful. They've allowed the most fantasy points to the position. So I still feel pretty solid about him. You mentioned Mo Alley Cox. Yeah, I mean, he has that former basketball background. He's played very well the last 2 weeks. And then Logan Thomas, can Logan Thomas ever do anything? Like, the guy's doing everything you're looking for in terms of analytics. He's running routes. He's out there. He's just, I guess Dwayne Haskins just hates Logan Thomas. So one of these weeks he's going to really pop off. Will it be this week? I don't know. Depends on what other options you could possibly go with. I think Austin Hooper is a sneaky play this week. I know a lot of people are down on him, but I think you can play him. And then if we find out that Deontay Johnson is in fact out this week and they play, I think Eric Ebron is somebody that you could probably look at as well. I would not chase the Jimmy Graham well. I know people are going to want to play him now after, not really doing a whole lot than last week, getting 10 targets and 2 touchdowns. I wouldn't trust that weekly moving forward. And then Jordan Akins is another guy that's widely available that I think that people are sleeping on a little bit. And he has been more and more involved. He wasn't fantastic last week, but somebody that's going to looks like to be the number 1 tight end now for Houston. And then I think Robert Tonyan against Atlanta in a matchup that they're going to have to throw the ball, I don't know. Like, I think he's somebody that people should be at least keeping an eye on. Because I know he scored a touchdown, a couple weeks ago. But he was somebody that was really hyped up over the offseason that people were really talking about. But right now, he's ninth in fantasy points per game for tight ends. He's run 42 routes. He's only saw 8 targets, but he does have 2 touchdowns. So I don't know if he can get a little bit more involved. I think he's at least somebody that I'd want to keep my eyes on because he scored touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. Last week, he had 5 targets, 5 receptions, 50 yards and a touchdown, 16 fantasy points. And then week 2, he had 2 receptions, 25 yards and a touchdown. So you get double-digit fantasy points from any tight end, you're thrilled with it. But, I mean, Robert Tonyan against Atlanta, I think, is another guy. Maybe deeper formats, 14, 16-team leagues, but somebody that I would definitely be keeping my eye on in 12-team leagues.
Love it, man. So that is going to wrap it up for the week 4 start or sit show. As always, please make sure however you're consuming this fantasy goodness, this content that we're putting out to you guys, whether it's in podcast form, if you're checking out the YouTube for the first time, if you haven't checked out the YouTube yet, and you've only been doing this by podcast, you're missing out on a lot. Make sure you head over to YouTube, search for the Fantasy Authority. Make sure you subscribe, like. If you're listening on podcast form, we'd really appreciate it if you guys did a rate and review for us. If you want to keep this a secret, if you want to keep it away from your league mates and your family and friends, if you don't want to tell anybody, at least give us a rate and review. That way you can help us out that way. Sunday morning, we are going to be doing the TFA pregame show again. Been having a lot of fun with you guys. We're going to kick that off at 11, and we're going to go until like 12:30, 12:35-ish, depending on how many questions we get in there at the end. And then tomorrow, the DFS D-Gen Nation show. Make sure you guys are checking that out as well. Like me and Kev talked about leading into the year, the tip, if you're not going to be listening to, I mean, obviously you should be listening to us, but if you're not going to be listening to us, listen to your DFS podcast, because those guys are breaking down everything you could possibly imagine. And Kevin, Maddie, and Ryan do an awesome job over there. So I think that's it, man. I think we're going to wrap it up. I think we're going to call it a night, getting this done in an hour. We're getting better at this timing thing, and it only took us a full year to get this down, but we're doing it for you guys. We love chopping it up with you, and we love interacting with you all. So follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Rate, review, like, subscribe. Appreciate you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon. Bye.